He followed us for miles without saying a word. My name is Jake Morrison, and what happened to me and my best friend Connor last October still keeps me up at night. We were both 22, just out of college, and thought a weekend hiking trip would be a good way to clear our heads after months of job hunting. The lot had only a few cars. The air was cool, leaves were dry underfoot, and for the first few miles, it was perfect. Just the two of us catching up, talking about life, joking around. At mile 3, I noticed someone behind us. We picked the Pine Ridge Loop, a 12-mile forest trail about 3 hours from home. It was known to be quiet and less traveled, which was exactly what we wanted. We got to the trailhead early Saturday morning, all gray hiking gear, a ball cap pulled low, sunglasses. I hoped he'd just pass by, but he didn't. He stopped right where the trail met the main path and stood there, not checking his watch, not drinking water, just standing. Small backpack, walking poles, pretty standard, but what stood out was how he never once stopped to admire the view or check his phone. There was a route from the Tower Trail that rejoined the main loop about a mile up. Same man, same distance, still matching our pace like before. There was no way he could have just disappeared like that. We stood there confused, scanning every direction. Then Connor pointed. Maybe 50 feet into the woods, just barely visible between the trees, was a figure. Full sprint, packs bouncing, boots slamming the trail. Behind us, we heard crashing branches and footsteps. He wasn't trying to be quiet anymore. We used the emergency phone to report what happened, but what were we supposed to say? A man followed us. That's not illegal. Standing still, facing us. They were kind, but I could see it on their faces. They didn't believe us. Tried a few other hikes, but it was never the same. Every person we saw behind us felt like a threat. Every crack in the woods made us turn around. We took it, moving quickly and quietly through the trees. How he never once looked like he was in a hurry, or tired, or even curious. Like he wasn't there to enjoy the hike. He was there for us. At the edge of the woods, watching us. I looked behind them. No sign of him. When we reached the main trail again, we didn't see him. We thought maybe we'd lost him. The students looked at us like we were crazy, but they offered to walk with us. We agreed. It was the first time we'd felt even a little safe. Just walked. Eyes straight ahead. The man, maybe a couple 100 feet back. At first, I didn't think anything of it. People hike. Forest to our left. Steep drop to our right. Then we saw another hiker coming from the other direction. A woman in her 30s with a dog. We greeted her, hoping she'd notice him and maybe talk to him, give us some sort of normal explanation. But the more I paid attention, the weirder it felt. But then we took a side trail to a lookout point, one not marked on most maps, and he followed. Every straightaway, I'd look back, he was there, always the same distance. When we paused for water, he stopped too, never getting closer, never falling behind. It wasn't normal. He stayed at the exact same distance, no matter how we adjusted our pace. If we sped up, so did he. If we slowed down, he did too. Always keeping that gap. Connor didn't think it was a big deal when I pointed it out. Maybe the guy just had a similar pace. Every time I looked back, he was there same distance. Like he was attached to us by a rope. When we reached the tower, we didn't climb it. Instead, we ducked behind the structure and waited. He looked to be in his 40s. There's an old fire tower off a hidden trail only locals usually know about. We decided to test him. Without saying a word, we took it. A few minutes later, I turned back. He was on it too. That's when the vibe changed from weird to wrong. Connor looked rattled. Neither of us said anything. We just started hiking faster. The trail to the fire tower is steep and narrow. We pushed hard, practically jogging uphill. We stayed hidden for maybe 10 minutes. Connor wanted to go talk to him. I didn't. Everything in me said don't. We decided to keep going. Then, 20 minutes later, Connor grabbed my arm. He was back. We kept walking, trying to stay calm. The trail narrowed along a ridge. But when I looked back, he was gone. Just vanished. The ridge was too steep to climb down. The woods were thick. It was him. We ran. The trail forked left toward the parking lot, for miles away, right toward the ranger station too. We took the right. Then, finally, we heard voices, a group of college kids walking together. Laughing, we pushed past them. Barely pausing to apologize, we stopped and tried to catch our breath when we reached the ranger station. It was locked, off-season, of course. The kids waited with us until Connor's girlfriend came to pick us up. As we drove out of the lot, I looked toward the tree line, and there he was, just standing there. He raised a hand. Not quite a wave, just acknowledgement. We never went back, and I still think about it, about how calmly he followed us, and we'll never know why. I found a campsite that wasn't on any map. I've always liked hiking off-trail. Something about stepping away from what everyone else sees makes the experience feel more personal. Last summer, I set out alone to find Maiden Lake, a place I'd heard about in passing at a small-town general store. The trail had faded into nothing at least an hour earlier, but I kept going. The forest was thick, and there were no signs of other people, no footprints, no trash, no broken branches. Just trees and silence. According to the old man behind the counter, it wasn't marked on any official map, but it was beautiful. The fire pit had been recently used. The setup looked intentional and clean, like someone who really knew what they were doing. But no one was there. He scribbled a rough direction on the back of a receipt and told me, "Just follow the ridge. If you're meant to find it, you will." I'd been hiking for nearly 6 hours that day. No answer. Underneath it, another of me tightening my boot laces. One was a close-up of my face while I sat at a red light. Another was me jogging on a trail I used on weekends. My heart started pounding. Whoever did this knew my routines, my habits. Then one with me sipping from my water bottle at a stream I'd stopped by a few hours ago. I knew I shouldn't look, but I did. Then I smelled coffee. It was strong and oddly out of place, freshly brewed, cutting through the earthy scent of the woods. Some were from earlier trips, me shopping at an outdoor gear store, me loading up my car, me sitting alone at my usual cafe. These pictures had been taken over weeks, maybe months. Someone had been following me, studying me. I felt my stomach turn. I thought maybe a hunter or another backpacker had set up nearby. He was average-looking, medium height, plain clothes, short brown hair. Not threatening at first glance, but he had a camera slung around his neck and this unnerving calmness, like none of this was strange to him. Curious. I followed the scent into a small clearing I'd almost passed by. There was a full campsite already. Set up tent, stove, bare canister, even a steaming mug sitting on a fold-out table. He just smiled, like this was part of some plan that was finally unfolding the way he hoped. I called out, just in case someone was nearby. At first, I thought maybe the camper had gone to collect firewood or stepped away to use the bathroom. Things no one should know unless they'd been watching for a long time. I almost left, figuring it was rude to poke around someone else's setup, but the smell of the coffee made me hesitate. He said he'd been following me for over 6 months. That I was different than his other subjects. I took one step closer. That's when I noticed the papers on the table, held down by stones. Told your sister you'd be off-grid at that meditation retreat you looked up. I was completely isolated, with no one expecting to hear from me for 7 more days. No cell signal. My GPS unit, he said he'd swapped it with a fake earlier in the day when I'd taken a break at the ridge. I checked it, and it looked right, but now I wasn't sure. Even got the time off cleared with your job. You've got a week. I followed it, half delirious, until I heard machinery in the distance. A construction crew was repairing a culvert. I collapsed near their truck and begged for help. No tent, no stove, no photos, no notebook, just empty woods, like no one had ever been there. But they believed something had happened. I had the fake GPS unit, and I wasn't the kind of person Who made up stories like that? Photos. Dozens of them, printed on cheap paper. The top one was of me taken that morning at the trailhead. The sun started to go down, and I had no idea where I was. I didn't care. I just knew I couldn't stop. Look for names that match people who went hiking and were never seen again. I wonder if they met him too. If they agreed to stay. Or if they were never given the choice. It didn't make sense. I cut through the thickest part of the trees, not caring how loud I was or how many branches tore at my clothes. No trace of him. No way to prove what I saw. I ran until I couldn't hear him anymore. Until I couldn't breathe. I flipped through them quickly. They weren't just from today. The tent was unzipped, and inside, I saw even more photos. These were closer, more deliberate, some taken from outside my apartment building. Next to the photos was a notebook. The writing was neat. Almost clinical. Day 1, subject purchased new boots. Neutral preference noted. Day 15, weekend. Activity confirmed. Subject hikes alone. Day 43. Target identified, conversation about maiden. Lake. Viable site selected. Day 98. Camp prepared. Awaiting arrival. Today was day 98. That's when I heard it. A branch cracked behind me. I turned and saw a man stepping calmly out of the trees. He didn't speak right away. Just stood there, watching me. My instinct screamed at me to run. But I was frozen. He finally said, "You came earlier than I thought." I didn't answer. I stepped back slowly, my hand moving to the bear spray on my hip. He didn't make any move toward me. He started talking, not like someone threatening me, but like someone making conversation. He mentioned things he shouldn't have known. My favorite. Hiking snacks, how I always double-check my GPS. How I touch a particular tree at Copper Creek for luck. I asked him what he wanted. His answer was vague, something about understanding me better, that pictures only told part of the story. Subjects. That word stuck in my mind like a splinter. This wasn't random. He'd planned all of it. Then he said something that chilled me. "I filed your hiking plan." That's when I realized just how deep this went. He'd been in my accounts. My life. I didn't wait. I turned and ran. Not back the way I came. He'd expect that. I spent the next several hours doing everything I could to stay hidden, doubling back, climbing a small ridge, moving through water when I could to throw off any trail. At some point in the early morning, I stumbled onto an old logging road. They called the sheriff. I told them everything. When the search teams went back to the clearing, there was nothing. Still, there was no rest. Since then, I've stopped hiking alone. Sometimes I check missing person reports. I shouldn't have ignored that warning sign. My name is Daniel Cooper, and I need to get this off my chest. 6 months ago I was driving medical supplies for a regional distributor, the kind of run where you burn half a tank to drop one cooler at a rural clinic. I was early, but late deliveries meant write-ups, and I was already on thin ice after 2 traffic delays. No county seal, no chain, just flaking white paint. Around there, that kind of sign usually means private timber access. Enter at your own risk. Watch for equipment. I checked the dash clock, 5:47 p.m. and eased in. A quarter mile later, a white SUV sat broadside across the lane. All 4 doors stood open, dome light fading. I had to get out to move or pass. My headlights washed over a low green building, looked like a retired ranger shed or logging office. A sodium flood over the door threw a weak yellow cone across the lot. Relief hit hard. Somebody had to be there. The silence hit. No insects, no wind, just cooling metal ticks. I killed my flashlight and looked through the side window. The man in front lifted a hand, maybe to wave me down, maybe to signal stop, but I was already swinging the van hard. My fuel light was on. My hands were shaking so badly I missed the first gas station entrance and circled back. The following Monday, our clinical liaison circulated an updated status list. Copper Hill outreach marked pharmacy pickup only, no after hours receiving. But when I cleaned the van that weekend, I found a single unfamiliar key in the glove box, tucked under folded manifests. I think I know the stretch, but the marker post is gone, and the access now shows a locked seasonal gate in the aerials. Whoever owns the timberland clearly manages entry on and off. I stopped looking. I moved on to warehouse work in town. I got lucky. Somebody marked me declined. I intend to keep it that way. Fresh white tack. Date, the night of that run. Note in thin block letters, declined. I keep wondering if a group out there is running off-grid retreats or survival selection weekends and using bait traffic to collect vehicles and participants. Maybe they thought I was another rival and logged me as a refusal when I bailed. I don't know. All I know is that a lot of people left their cars, their keys were cataloged, and someone kept records. I had not written it. Nobody at the shop claimed it. No weekend surgeries, no need for stat kits. Our root software had pulled my work order from an archive template tied to an account that closed during a network consolidation. IT called it an old data burp. I called dispatch from under bright canopy lights and said I had mechanical trouble on a bad access road, no safe way through. The load was marked delayed and temperature questionable. I took the write-up and, 2 weeks later, turned in my badge. I clipped a bumper, got straight, and drove those miles out faster than I should have. In the mirrors I caught scattered beams bouncing through the tree's headlamps, not headlights keeping to the road but never quite closing the distance. A group of maybe 20 people came out of the trees from the same direction as the prints I had seen. Mixed ages. Outdoor jackets, work boots, one woman in office clothes like she had come straight from a shift. Nobody talking. They moved in a tidy line toward the shed, each carrying a headlamp or lantern angled down. It looked organized, like a search drill or some controlled exercise except for the silence. I tried my phone, still no bars. The schedule didn't matter anymore. I wanted directions and to report the abandoned cars. The door stood ajar. I pushed in and called out, nothing. Inside, empty seats, a dead phone on the dash, a child seat base but no carrier. Keys in the console. In the dirt beside the driver door, several boot prints and at least one smaller tread, all angling off into the timber in a straight, evenly spaced file. It was a Friday in late September. By then I was spooked enough to think about reversing out, but backing a loaded van for miles in the dark felt worse. I pushed on and passed more vehicles than aging pickup, a compact hatch, a dusty crossover, even an old county utility truck with faint striping under pollen. Some looked recent, others had leaves drifted up over the wheels. All empty. Most with keys left. A few had numbered parking tags clipped to the visor, as if someone had checked them in. Branches brushed the box van. I kept it around 25 to keep the load upright. Cell signal dropped. The mapping app froze me as a blue dot in gray. The road coiled around old cuts and skid trails. Then a dark sedan appeared nose first in scrub, bumper pressed to a sapling. Everything wore dust except the desktop, which had been wiped clean. Lined across it were bunches of car keys, each on a white tag with a handwritten date. And short note, March 15, 23 red sedan, the 2nd of June 23 UTV, the 9th of August 20 for County TK, and so on dozens. On the wall map the service road showed as a straight-through route, but pencil marks added loops and side spurs that curled inward toward a circled X. A clipboard hung beside the map. The last line was time-stamped 3 hours earlier. Name I didn't recognize. Purpose column selected. Glass intact, door shut, keys hanging in the column. No one inside. It looked less like a wreck and more like someone eased it there and walked off. About 3 miles in I noticed fresh tire impressions all pointing deeper in. None showed a return track, which I told myself meant the exit tied into another road I had forgotten. One last run, fracture kits and suture trays to a site on my manifest called Copper Hill Outreach Clinic, roughly 3 hours out. Highway construction showed a single-lane closure that would push me past the 8 p.m. Receiving cut off. Dispatch texted, do what you can. They need it for weekend cases. I remembered an old service road through the hills that could save 45 minutes. I had ridden it years earlier with a senior driver who said locals used it to dodge highway backups. Against my better judgment and against another write-up and losing hours, I chose the shortcut. The turnoff was a narrow break in the tree line near a sun-faded mile marker. A warped board onto posts read "Restricted, do not enter." The first mile was broken asphalt that soon gave way to rutted dirt. Dust collapsed fast under the canopy, so I kicked on headlights. I should have stopped longer, but I rolled past. I managed to squeeze around the SUV and shaved off my passenger mirror doing it. The road finally opened into a clearing maybe an acre wide, ringed by pines and one old radio mast. I parked among at least a dozen more vehicles, some with plates from 2 states over. Inside was one room, a desk, 2 metal chairs, a file cabinet, a corkboard map of the tract. While I was still processing that word, I heard feet in the clearing, many, slow in sync. I did not wait to ask. I grabbed my keys, bolted for the van, and started backing out before anyone reached the door. When pavement finally reappeared, my dash pinged back to cell service. What I learned afterward bothered me more. Maybe that is all it was. I tried once to relocate the turnoff in daylight using odometer notes and satellite imagery. Still, whenever I pass a private access road with a hand-painted warning sign, I slow down and scan the tree line. If you drive back roads for a living, log your routes. Question bad directions, and turn around if something feels staged.